Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Boston-based jazz saxophonist, composer, and educator Seba Molnar. He reached out to the show about his latest 2020 CD, Level Up, and we're quite glad that he did. It's a Coltrane-inspired sound, it's straight ahead, and it's a good one. He grew up on a hippie commune off the grid in Canton, New York, and has been gigging on the saxophone and clarinet since the age of 12. His high school band director, Tim Savage, introduced him to jazz, and that led him going to the Berklee College of Music and a study with the likes of George Garzone, and that has led to a curiosity for new sounds and innovation to create a wide array of music that transcends genre. So please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Hey, first and foremost, thank you for reaching out to Neon Jazz. I always love hearing new music. It's a wonderful album.
Yeah, well, thank you for getting back.
You bet. So let's go ahead and talk about Level Up. You got a heavy hitter on there with George Garzone. So talk to me a little bit about what you were going for. What was the sound you were aiming for with this album?
I guess it was kind of just a amalgamation of all my influences growing up and in school. John Coltrane was a huge influence on me. Working with George Garzone especially kind of opened that door a little bit more. So I guess kind of a modern take on the vibe of the 50s and 60s modal jazz, Coltrane kind of vibe.
Yeah, and it has a great sound to it. I hear all of that coming through. Let's begin at the beginning of your life, Canton, New York. Talk to me about your childhood and how you really got into jazz.
So I had a very unconventional upbringing. I grew up on like a hippie commune from the 60s, 70s, organic vegetable farm. We lived off the grid. My house was solar-powered, rainwater. We grew all our own food. My dad has his own school on the farm. So I was kind of cut off from society to some extent. I mean, we still went to town and interacted and whatever. And I ended up going to public school for the music program. A big part of that was I didn't really listen to any music post-70s until I went to college. So it was it was like, I would say, an equal mix of jazz, kind of Coltrane, Miles, some more avant-garde like Ornette Coleman, Sun Ra stuff, and then an equal mix of like hippie rock, Grateful Dead, Allman Brothers, Santana, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my musical background. I started playing clarinet when I was 10 years old, picked up saxophone about a year later, and then I would say by the time I was 12, I knew that I wanted to do music full-time.
Now that you kind of have a more of a comparative valve of, living in society and kind of the modern realm and then being off the grid, what was it like to be off the grid? Did that really enhance your kind of artistic side or just kind of your view on how you see things?
I think absolutely, because I didn't have all the distractions that we have in the normal world. Like, we didn't have TV. I didn't get internet until like later into my high school years, and that was like a struggle to get that on the farm. A lot of people there that just enjoy the freedom of not having those things. So I think it kind of left me with either I play outside or I practice. I didn't have any other distractions to take away from that.
In high school, your band director, Tim Savage, I'd imagine he introduced you to jazz and was probably pretty influential on your path to becoming a jazz musician.
The first real introduction to jazz was I did a road trip with my dad, and we listened to a lot of. That's kind of when I got into train. I was 8 years old when that happened, and then when I met Tim Savage, that was kind of when I was like, oh, this is something that I could maybe actually do myself rather than just listen to and enjoy. He's a really inspirational guy. He had, or still is. He has just the ability to kind of take a room of middle school kids and make them sound like a halfway decent band, get everybody. He's very inspiring. So yeah, he was the one that kind of lit the spark that made me want to take it to the next level and eventually pursue it in college.
You go to Berklee and, George Garzone and there's others that you studied under. What did you get from these masters of the jazz craft that really resonate with the way you approach the stage today?
That's a tricky one. Probably my top three teachers I studied with or learned the most would be George Garzone, Bill Pierce, and Shannon LeClaire. And they all kind of had a very different teaching style, I found. Like with George, it was less him like giving me something specific to work on and me practicing it and coming back and then him critiquing it, and almost more just kind of being around him and taking in the vibe and learning passively almost through him, if that makes sense. Whereas with Shannon, it was a lot more structured. She kind of had a system. These are things that we need to work on. And so I guess I enjoyed all of them for their own individual teaching styles. Between all of them, I kind of got a nice mix.
Is the stage kind of a second home for you? Do you get nervous? Is it a comforting place? How do you approach the stage?
I definitely still get nervous, but I think it's a good nervous, It's the butterflies of excitement. I think definitely I feel comfortable up there. I enjoy performing.
What do you like best about being a musician?
Having my work and my passion be so intertwined with one. At times it feels like I'm not working, even though I am, just because I'm so in love with what I'm doing. And I think the ability to connect with so many people that I otherwise have nothing in common with or no connection with, I think is a really powerful tool.
What was one of the first live jazz shows that you ever saw where you thought, man, this is wonderful?
Wow. I think so. In my hometown in Canton, despite it being a very small town, there is a music school the next town over, the Crane School of Music, which provided me with some really great instructors to go work with, and it also brought in a lot of like nationally touring acts. I think one that really stuck out to me at a young age was Wynton Marsalis and the Jazz at Lincoln Center. The first time I saw them was definitely a profound experience, life-changing in a way. And then I got to meet him afterwards, too, which was amazing. Just to see his dedication to the craft and education was very inspiring.
So if you could get into a time machine, you get into the Jazz DeLorean and go anywhere in time and see anybody and maybe even have a conversation with them, who would you go in the history of jazz to talk to and see?
I think Dizzy Gillespie would be my first choice. Just because I see him as kind of the grounding figure of that time. He stayed out of the drugs and was kind of like a father figure to a lot of those guys. And I feel like the original Teach, as it were. I'd love to pick his brain.
Right on. So why do you love jazz?
It just spoke to me at a very young age, and it's almost a way of life now. My whole life revolves around it. So it's a love, it's just life. It's a love-hate relationship. On some days it's great, some days it's a struggle. It's just a journey, and I enjoy that, I guess.
Finally, I want to know this. Everyone has their perception of who they think you are as a person. Your family, your friends, your fans, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
I don't know. I think I'm still kind of figuring that out. I think this album was a nice learning experience for me to really kind of dive in and figure out who I am, what my sound is, what kind of music I want to make. I had the opportunity to work with some super talented individuals from all over the world. Our drummer, Clemens, is from Germany. The bassist, Soso, is from Georgia, the country. And then the pianist, Jens, was from the Bahamas. I think having grown up in community, one of my strengths is bringing people together and kind of creating an environment for other people to flourish in, which in turn benefits me as well. So yeah, I don't know. I guess some sort of growing organism that hopefully can create something larger than myself, my goal.
Right on, man. Yeah, that's great. Hey, thank you again for reaching out to the show. Thank you for giving me the music and giving me some of your time today, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Boston, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Seba for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.